Welcome back. My name is Matt Reiners, and I'm the co-founder of Eversound, which was recently acquired by Uniguest, a company committed to developing engagement technologies to help communities connect and improve the quality of life for older adults. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Kelly Stranburg, the founder of Excellence in Wellness. I think Kelly has pretty much done everything in senior living. She's been on the provider side, whether it's working directly in the communities or as a regional. She's also been on the vendor side and also on the consultant side, and has pretty much seen anything and everything. And I've gotten to know Kelly over the years on the conference circuit, and we first became friends because we learned we were from similar parts of the world in upstate New York. So go Bills. But Kelly is one of the most passionate people I know. She'll tell you like it is, which is a great thing. And someone that I consider a friend. And I'm just so grateful to have her on for a conversation today. So thanks for joining me, Kelly.
Thank you, Matt. What a awesome intro. And yes, of course, go Bills.
Go
If
Bills.
anybody knows Matt and I, should know by now that we love to go back and forth rooting for our beloved Buffalo Bills.
You already know. So Kelly, I had mentioned that you've done everything in senior living, but I'm curious, can you share a little bit of your background and how you got into senior living?
Absolutely. So, like many people, I ended up in senior living by accident. Um, I'm an exercise physiologist. That's my educational background, and an operator based here in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Maxwell Group, back in 2008. Very forward thinking. The CEO, Donald Thompson, wanted to hire somebody with an exercise background to come in and do exercise programming for residents for all levels of care across their portfolio of life plan communities. And I was like, hmm. Saw the job description. I was like, gosh, it looks like it was written for me. But I was like, I don't know anything about that industry. I was like, I'll apply if it happens, happens. If not, who cares? Right. And my very first lesson in senior living, I remember I applied on Memorial Day because I was off from work. And I remember I faxed my application. So we're going back a ways.
Oh,
And I got a phone call 45 minutes later to set up an interview. And I remember saying to the person, you guys are working on a holiday? So there's my first lesson in senior living. And if you've heard me speak at a conference, I'm the first one to advocate for our residents live with us 24/7, 365. They are not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 residents. And so from there, that's my job just went from fitness programming. And very quickly, within a few months, I was over all types of programming for all levels of care, amenities, transportation, concierge, salon and spa. I became the dementia trainer for a company. I've overseen dining a couple of times in my career. I've been an interim VP of ops. I've been an interim ED. I don't know. They were just like, oh, we have this opportunity we need filled. Send Kelly out there. She'll figure it out. But it was the best education I could have ever asked for. And it really catapulted me into this space that I've come to just love so, so much.
I love that. And I feel like Kelly, you're one of those people who is a jack of all trades, but a master of a few, and it's usually a master of none. So way to go on that. And one of the things I want to talk about, so we talk about this programming piece, and I want to talk about the resident engagement side. And I'm curious, like, what does resident engagement mean to you?
I really think what resident engagement really boils down to is how does a resident wake up and choose to spend their day? What matters to them? What is their purpose? Um, and I was thinking about this morning, kind of prepping in my head for our conversation today, and I was like, resident engagement, I think, continues to be riddled with stereotypes around it. And I think you and I both have been privy to that. And that it's not about pacifying people by keeping them busy. It's become this opportunity to truly make a difference in their quality of life. And I think the operators who are truly excelling in that resident engagement space are the ones willing to invest in the different ways to really help somebody improve their quality of life, as opposed to let's just have a full calendar and keep people busy all day. It's not about keeping people busy, because You and I are busy all day. We're not living our, I mean, we do live our life off a calendar, but it's not, a social calendar of events, we'll say, because we wake up and we have purpose with our respective jobs and our families and our spouses or partners, whatever, animals, pet owners, so our purpose varies. But then when somebody chooses to move into one of these settings, that starts to look very different. And so, what is the community providing that helps fulfill that person's daily purpose and whatever that might be?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point, right? And yes, I do live and die by my calendar, and actually told
So
my
do I.
wife on our third date, if it's not on our joint calendar, it doesn't exist, which I've told that to others, and people are like, I'm surprised you've even lasted this long. But yes, but it's true, right? It's like bringing out the best within these people and helping to give them purpose. And I'm curious too, since you've been in this industry for 15 plus years, like how have you seen that? And you've been on, as you mentioned before, everything and every side of it. But like, how have you seen that evolve over your time in this industry?
I think where we're heading, and I think we're starting to see some steps in change towards where we're heading. There was a point in time where I think when we looked at resident engagement, it was like, how many things can we be providing? And it became like, how full is your calendar? And oh, we offer, 55 things every day. And it's like, okay, in some circles that could be great, but where's the quality? And so even in my own experience, and even with the last couple operators I worked with in a consulting capacity, it really became, what is the quality of what we're offering? And it's a hard pill to swallow after all of these years kind of being told more is better, to then be told, well, we can lighten up on the quantity to have appropriate quality programming. And I would challenge a couple operators and say, hey, if you're going to have like this huge, let's say we're having like a huge fall festival and it includes like wine tasting and some game events and a special menu at dinner, do we really need to have 12 things all day long leading up to this amazing event? I think all of your energy and resources need to go into that event so that it's delivered well, things are executed on well. And so, I started to get to this point where the quantity didn't matter as much to me anymore. And that's a hard pivot, because then I also think there's the optics of that. Like, oh, we don't do much here. No, that's not the case. What we do here is amazing or awesome. And it provides value and impact. And it's something desired by the residents. It's all you programming people out there. I get it. If you've had to deliver 10, 12 programs in a day, it's hard and it's exhausting. In the quality of how you facilitate those does differ. And so I naturally started to evolve where I was like, no, I want to do things that are really well done. And I do think there's quite a few people across our space doing the same thing. I mean, I know you've had Scott Smith on here. He's a wonderful example of a programming guru who continues to evolve what he does. And so I think with this consumer who's starting to come in to our communities, I think they're going to be seeking better quality offerings. And I'm going to pick on a real simple example just because of my educational background, but let's take exercise, for example. If if I'm a 78-year-old super active individual, I go to the gym, I can still hike, I ride my bike, and I come into the community and we're doing some sort of passive chair-based exercise offering, does that suit me? No.
Hmm.
And it's seated exercise has a place sometimes, but it's we've become conditioned to offer these things. And it's like, when are we going to start to pivot? And we should be offering things like yoga and Pilates and variety of strength classes based on people's abilities, and have dancing classes and have everything else that can go with that. And because those opportunities can directly impact how well one ages. And that comes back to that quality of life piece, because what's the point of living a long time if we're not living well? And
Mm.
so I think that's where we're starting to see some shifts in how people are thinking and approaching the quality of offerings. And so I just, it makes me excited because what I wanted for the space 15 years ago is finally starting to happen. I'm like, we made it. We were getting our day in the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. I'm definitely a big fan of quality over quantity, right? And I'd rather go an inch wide and a mile deep versus just, staying surface level. And, you continue to see these things on calendars like balloon toss or some of these other things. And, I think if you're able to kind of do, you always see the post too about these amazing events that people are doing. And they seem to bring the most joy, the most engagement, and like how can you get people to rally around those and like really, build that. And I think as human beings, right, like you kind of live for those bigger moments. Whether it's, vacations or things that would happen at school or like, homecoming and stuff like that. And it's interesting to kind of think about that quality over quantity piece rather than just, let's just jam pack of what's happening and going through that. So the other piece of resident engagement, I'm curious of your take on. I know we talk ad nauseum about this, Kelly, but what gaps are there today in how we think about resident engagement and what these professionals for doing that are actually doing?
Yeah, Matt, Matt and I do talk about this a lot when we're together on the road. I think there's such opportunity right now to really be pouring in to staff and we've got a staffing concern across the industry. And I know some people are probably going to listen to this and be like, oh, one more thing, but I think the more we can be pouring into our staff and helping them grow as professionals, regardless of whether they stay with us for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, I think we have, I'm going to use this word, I think we have an obligation to help them be better professionals. So helping them with some business acumen, helping them understand the financial side of senior living in a different way. Tell them occupancy scores. Tell them what one move in and one move out, what that means from a budgetary standpoint. You and I love to talk about, you know, the need for even basic technology training. If you've ever worked in a community, there's a good chance you've had, deal with AV equipment and you're having to stream and you have 350 residents with 350 smartphones and tablets and devices and laptops, you name it. And so I think, having a comfortable understanding, like you might not, be a director of IT, but you have to have a level of comfort. I remember when I still worked at a life plan community here in Charlotte called Sharon Towers, I would panic if I was in charge of certain AV things for certain events, and I'd be like, I was like, oh my God. I'm like, where's the director of IT? I gotta make sure I know how to do this. And God bless this man. He'd be like, I've shown you this 18 times. I go, I know, but that was like 3 months ago. And now I've forgotten. And now I'm really nervous and I'm going to screw up this event. And so there has to be a level of comfort because as you and I know, we have tech-based solutions coming into the resident engagement space fast and furiously these days. And you have to be comfortable with it. Even when I used Eversound, there's a tech component to that. Thankfully, Eversound is easy to use, you guys. Shameless plug. Matt told me not to talk about Eversound, but I was like, how can I not? I love your solution.
Well, it's true too, right? And I think, you and I were talking about this the other day. Like, I think there's this kind of expectation for the life enrichment activities team to help a lot with technology. And like I was just even perusing some job descriptions the other day, and there wasn't one mention of technology or anything like that, where, I think it's this idea of an activities professional is someone that's usually pretty gregarious, outgoing, loves being with people, but now the majority of solutions that are being given to them, especially from the home office, is some sort of technology base. And I find a lot of the time technology is not a comfortability, usually maybe even tech phobic. And how are we setting them up for success in doing that, and at least being clear in the expectations, right? Because if that's the way that this industry is going to continue to go, I don't see these industries hiring additional people in these communities to help with that. And the ITs are they're more focused on resident security, HIPAA, all that sort of stuff, which, is definitely important. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, how do we set these people up for success to have general AV knowledge, connecting things to TVs, getting something from a computer from one screen to another? It's just like a lot of things where, growing up as a millennial might come easy to me, but, to the majority of people, it doesn't. And, how are we enabling these people? Which, I think is a perfect segue into my next question here, Kelly, is, what are your thoughts on striking that balance? When I think of activity professionals, resident engagement, it's a very high touch model, and it's almost like shifting or adjusting or adding on this high tech model or these digital experiences. And, how do we strike that balance between traditional in-person activities and digital experiences, and how can technology help facilitate that balance?
Well, and this isn't going to surprise you, my answer. I think one, it always comes back to the resident preferences. What is it they really want? And I think part of our role as engagement specialists is exposing residents to new offerings that might be delivered digitally or virtually, and then letting them kind of drive the ship, if you will, on whether that's something they really, really want access to regularly. And I think when your residents express desire for a solution when it comes to engagement, I think that's then where your engagement professionals start to go, okay, I need to learn this because it's for my resident. I mean, and if you were to poll everybody in senior living, I feel pretty comfortable and confident saying people work in this space because they love the residents, but especially resident engagement professionals, that the residents are their heart and soul. And so I think when residents say, oh, we can get this offering and it's streamed to us through this engagement platform, we love that. That's awesome. How do we do it? How do we access it? And I think that resident engagement professionals going to learn how to get comfortable with it so they can make sure the residents know how to access it. And so I think really leaning into your residents and allowing them to kind of dictate what services and solutions that they really like. And then on the vendor side of it, I think the most important thing to be sharing with anybody who works in a community is how a solution helps them to do their job more easily, more effectively. Like if you don't get that why out in front of the staff and get them on board with the why behind a solution, if you don't do that, it's going to be a really, really hard sell for the training aspect. As you know, you've been doing training in communities for years. And so that why has to be powerful and it needs to make sense for their roles in the community. And then I think that potential hurdle gets overcome. And so that people are really open then to learning, because over the years, especially in recent years, I've had plenty of people say to me, oh, old people don't like tech. I'm like, wrong. I was like, couldn't be further from the truth. I was like, actually, I think our residents are very open, across, the youngest resident to the oldest resident are very open to technology. It's typically us as staff in a community who are like, oh, I got to learn one more thing. There's kind of that mentality. And so you start to become adverse to these new solutions in the space, not because they aren't going to do amazing things. It's more you're worried about, I have to learn this and know it and embrace it and understand it. But I think if the vendor side of life really does a wonderful job of explaining why this is important, how it will help you, and if your residents also are demanding it, I think your learning ability opens wide up and you're much more open to receiving that training and then embracing it. So there's a couple of things you got to tackle there with that, but it's tech is here to stay. I mean, and we all see it even as professionals in our lives. Did you ever think in a million years you'd be using Slack channels and Google Docs and Zoom and all these other tools? If you told me 10 years ago I was going to be using all these tech-based tools, I'd be like, no, not me, not me. And now here I am. And I'm like, oh gosh, I couldn't imagine doing work without any of these tools. And so I think it's just an evolution.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. It's like the WIFM, right? Like, what's in it for me? Like, how does it help me? How does it help my residents? And starting to get into that mindset, because that's what it should be, right? Like, how does it allow me to be more successful or help create some of these experiences that could not have been possible before? And I think we were kind of shown, I think one of the silver linings coming out of the pandemic was we were forced to use some of this technology and could see what it could do, and really how technology allows us to take away from these four doors or these four walls and really open up to the entire world around us and really do that.
You know what I found most fascinating during the pandemic was we had gotten really creative with how we delivered engagement opportunities. What I never anticipated was when we started to, the world started to open back up and we were able to start doing in-person programming again. I never anticipated residents saying, but wait, you're not going to stop the virtual stuff, right? You're not going to stop the programming on the in-house TV channel. And I was like, what? So it became a demand I didn't anticipate. I figured everybody wanted to be back in person. People like, well, no, I kind of like the online exercise class taught by the fitness director downstairs, but I can do it in my apartment. And I was like, and I will never forget. I was like, why? I was like, why don't you want to go downstairs when so and so? And they were like, I don't want to walk all the way downstairs. I'm like, for exercise class.
That's funny.
But the element of convenience started to come out that, oh, I will do this exercise class if it's in my home and I just have to walk from my bedroom to my living room, turn it on. It takes me 5 minutes. I don't have to, get ready, go downstairs. And I was like, all right. And so it definitely changed how we were starting to structure, this new way of providing programming and even scheduling it. Because I never thought people would want to keep things streamed and on demand and things like that. So
Yeah.
I learned a valuable lesson there, that's for sure.
Yeah, it changed a lot of the patterns and kind of habits of us, of as an entire culture and society. Um, the last question I have for you, Kelly, if you were to give other senior living providers or vendors or tech companies, consultants, take it any way you want, just three guiding principles as we navigate through the next 12 months, what would you say?
Ooh, three guiding principles. Tough question, Matt. Um, I think there's a few things to think about. My first one, people have heard me say a million times, but it's your resident discovery process. It's so critical. And I think sales teams do an amazing job getting to know residents while they're prospects really, really well. And they're a wealth of knowledge. And so something even on a welcome home CRM call he was on recently, I was like, hey, you guys are capturing really good information about these residents moving in. How does that get in the hands of like engagement professionals? So I got their wheels spinning a little bit. So it's that resident discovery piece is just so critical to actually know who's living in your community. What do they like? What are their future goals? It's not always about who have they been up until they move in. It's also about who do they want to continue to be. And I think that's where we start to see purpose play into daily life. So that resident discovery process continues to be just, to me, very, very critical. And then I think looking at how many solutions you have in an organization. My former business partner, Sarah Kyle, I will never forget the day she called me up and so I was like, hey, how many tech-based solutions do you all use at your company? And I was like, what? She was like, just do me a favor, count them all and text me. And I was like, okay. And I'm sure I didn't land on all of them, but I remember sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh. And so I was like, I don't know, I kind of like 18. I'm sure there's plenty more I didn't know. And she goes, do they all talk to each other? And I was like, my head was like, and I was like, and I think sometimes when we are researching these different solutions out there, sometimes we don't realize it's nobody's at fault. It just happens that some of these solutions do some similar things. And so it's when you really start to dig into all of your solutions that you use, whether it's for your EHR, your resident engagement platforms, tech-based solutions, you name it, start to really analyze what do you have in-house and are you adequately using them? And are there some that you could, don't shoot me vendors, but are there some you could get rid of because now you're double dipping what these tools do for your organization? And so it's almost like you're doing almost like a tech audit or solutions audit, if you will. I think that's really valuable. And I think some people will find ways to save money because I know I did. And then this is not going to be solved in the next 12 months. I wish the industry as a whole, we were doing more to fight these stigmas and stereotypes that still surround our space. I've taken some strides, especially coming out of the pandemic. We all learn how critical transparency is for our industry and that people need to understand our industry better. But I think we still have a long ways to go. And I think using more videos and photographs on your websites of your actual residents, leaning into social media. I mean, social media is not going anywhere. So we might as well embrace these tools and use it to really tell the story of what it's like to live in a community, to work in a community. Shameless plug for myself, Matt, talking about this topic at Leading Age in the fall with Chris Mormon. But I think there's just a long ways to go because I even had a conversation this summer and somebody gave me their take on our space. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, you got this out of a movie and Hollywood sensationalized what this space is like. I was like, you literally just told me something you probably saw in a TV show or a movie. And I was mortified. I was like, that's what you think the space I work in is? And so that tells me that we still have a lot of work to do, but it's a humongous opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, I love it.
My 3 things.
Well, Kelly, I always learn something whenever our paths cross. So, I just want to thank you for coming on and just, thank you for your friendship over the past few years. It's people like you that give me hope for this industry and just excited to see where it can go with people like you helping to drive it. So thank you.
Thank you for asking me to be on here. And like we always say, go Bills.
Gotta end it with that, of course.
If you'd like to know when we post the next episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you're interested in how Eversound can help improve the quality of life in your community, find out more at eversoundhq.com.